The next aspect about heritage management is policing. It's all very well to have regulations and rules, but if they're not properly policed, then people begin to take matters into their own hands. And that can be quite dangerous. There's a lot of surreptitious things that go on behind the scenes where people try and change buildings without approval. They think they can get away with it. Usually they're caught, and there's more problems than they ever wished once they are caught. That policing needs to be quite rigorous, not too heavily applied, but it needs to be in the population's consciousness about the fact that there are rules, there are people watching what you're doing, and the understanding about heritage buildings is that they belong to everybody in the community. So even though they are privately owned, the fact that they are listed or noted on a conservation protection order means that everybody shares an interest and has a right to understand what goes on with the building. And this is where owners misunderstand that process. They think they can get away with making changes without approval, and they miss the entire point of what a heritage listing is all about. Another aspect of heritage management is funding. Obviously, without funds, not much of this can take place. And even though the bulk of the cost falls on the private owner, there are systems in which we can create incentives through council processes, through the approval process, just in the way that they are incentivizing startup companies now in another sector of the economy. It's important to create incentives in the heritage industry in order to assist owners and even publicly owned buildings in having them constantly cared for and looked after and maintained and monitored and policed in the way that privately owned buildings are funded as well. Lastly, the eighth aspect about heritage management is auditing. We need to continually refresh our systems. We need to look back 5, 10 years later at those sorts of intervals to see whether our systems are working, to take a step back, see how they can be improved, what aspects of the legislation, for instance, can be changed, what aspects of heritage practice itself can be changed. Are we policing sufficiently? Are we monitoring? Are we funding? All these things need to be looked at regular intervals to make sure that the system is functioning well.